Hey, you are now listening to the Graceway Podcast. Let's talk.
Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to Let's Talk, a podcast of Graceway, Kansas City, Missouri. And I'm here with Pastor Tim Dunn. We're going to talk here in just a second. But Pastor Tim, before we get into the talking, I was just commenting to you, Cheryl and I were driving home from a family wedding yesterday. And so we were listening to you on YouTube through Apple CarPlay in our car. And I mention that because that's not the first time that I've done that. And technology is certainly in some ways a threat, but it's also our friend.
Yeah.
Because otherwise I would not have been able to, I would have had to stay up late and listen to the sermon in another way. But I mention that because we have a lot of people listening to us, not just from Graceway, but other places around the country and quite frankly, other places around the world. And I just want to remind everyone that you can access Pastor Tim's messages on Sunday morning or whoever's speaking that day at Graceway directly from the website, from the Graceway Facebook page. You can look them up on YouTube. I mean, there's just all types of ways to access his message. And what we do on this podcast, Let's Talk, is we talk about what you said. It was a very simple concept.
Complicated, yeah.
Nothing complicated about it at all. But you can find this podcast anywhere you get your podcast. You can access it, again, directly from the Graceway website, or you can find it when you look for podcast on Apple or Google or Spotify. There's just so many different ways, which is great. And while I'm mentioning that, let me just remind you, if you have not already done so, please like us on whatever format. The first thing I wanted to ask you, Pastor Tim, we're riding back, and so we had stopped to get some breakfast, and I dialed up YouTube on my iPhone, getting ready to connect it to the car, and I saw the title of your message,
right.
And I loved it. It's the silly that saves.
Yeah.
And I thought, okay, this has got to be good.
Sure.
And so it was a few minutes into the message before you used that line.
Right.
So just making sure that people don't miss the point.
Yeah.
What was the point?
Yeah.
Talk about that.
So we're talking about Passover, right? Which is in and of itself a pretty direct story, pretty direct, symbolic, even prophetic idea pointing us to Jesus. And I just was struck as I was going through it, in all of the beauty and the prophetic. Sometimes we miss the humanity of the thing, of Moses getting everyone around and saying, here's what we're going to do. The angel of death is going to pass over us, and as long as you kill a lamb and wipe its blood on your doorposts, you'll be good. And I could picture myself saying, that is the dumbest idea I have ever heard in my life. And I also got thinking about, just where we've been in Scripture, the amount of times that God asks Abraham, Joseph, Jacob to do things that, we know we're familiar with them. So there's some certainty and there's some, of course God asked him to do that. But that wouldn't have been their experience. And then I kind of was thinking about my own life and times where God had me in a position or God led me in a certain way that I just thought, I know you're God, but this is so dumb. This is so silly that you're leading me this way or asking me to do this or putting me in this position. And I think that as I've been going through the text, just to see when people are willing to surrender their definition of silly or logical or certain, just how many times God shows up and does, tremendous things. And I just thought, them accepting what may have felt silly was their salvation at Passover. And so...
Yeah, I love the title. I knew that something good was coming, but I guess my question from that is something that I've seen you work several times during this series, taking us through the entire Bible, and it's drawing that line between the certainty of our faith.
Yes.
And then on the other side, you have that mysterious awe that I think sometimes we have lost in the modern world.
Yeah.
What do you say to that?
Yeah, I mean, well, first off, you look great today. I'm sorry, folks, that I'm sitting here in a Nike workout shirt. Monday is normally a sore sore and tired morning for me, so I couldn't bring myself to look as dapper as you. Yeah, I mean, you said it. In the modern era, and this is not a criticism. It's just it's historically accurate. The church really committed itself to modernity, which is the idea that if it's true, it needs to be certifiable,
Right.
Scientifically or otherwise. And that gave birth to post-modernity, which is nothing is certifiable, right? And we're in this chaos, and the church freaked out about the postmodern era because we had so committed ourselves to the modern era. And in the modern era, I said on Sunday, we aligned ourselves with power brokers that would, mostly political, that would allow us to legislate our certainty. And we began to train people in apologetics to kind of reinforce certainty. And I told the story of a mom saying to me one time, if I send my student to your student ministry, when are you going to teach him apologetics so he's ready to go to college? And I just thought that was such an interesting, she made the assumption that we were going to train him in apologetics so he would be safe and protected. And
I don't take it from you that that's a criticism
Not
of
at
the
all.
discipline of apologetics.
no,
But it's our overemphasis upon intellectualism.
Yeah, and I think anytime you commit yourself to any facet of your faith, overcommit yourself to it, it has a trajectory to it, and damage can be done. I think because everything had to be factual and certifiable, we lost the sense of awe, we lost the sense of beauty, we lost the sense of mystery, and really underneath all of it, now we're in this spot where if it doesn't feel safe and certain to us, we think it's not God.
Yeah.
And so then we're in a really dangerous place because many times God leads us, I said, out to the deep end of the pool, and our feet are dangling and we're choking and gasping, and we think God would never do this to me. Well, your Bible says the opposite.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a dangerous thing not to commit yourself to the solvency, intellectual solvency of your faith. Obviously, I want people to do that.
Yeah, so Pastor Tim, how and where do we draw the line between that certainty and that mysterious awe, or do we even need to be concerned about that?
I think awareness is 9/10 of it, to be honest. It's the reason that I said, hey, I'm gonna challenge you a little bit here today. I don't think that we think about where we find our safety and where we find our certainty very often. And I don't know that I would say we need to draw the line. I think both are necessary. And I think that there are different tribes and denoms that have committed themselves to one of the side, and there are others that have committed themselves to the other side.
Sure.
The experience, the awe, the mystery, versus the theology, the doctrine, the commentary. All those. And I'm trying to say we need both.
Yeah,
We need both.
I think that's a good way to express it. We need both.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to someone who says, well, I have a student in high school ready to go to college.
Yeah.
How do I prepare them?
Yeah.
How do
That's
I
good.
give them that confidence? Maybe
Yeah.
it's not certainty, but the word would be confidence.
That's right, and that's an important thing. There's a difference between certainty and confidence, and we only find our certainty in God Himself, not our views of Him. I would say, and I'm trying to do this with my kids, and this isn't just to students, but I talk to them a lot about learning to hear from God, learning to know how God leads, learning to follow, learning to listen. This was, a lot of my points at the end. Learn to listen, learn to be led, remember you're loved was my outline. The learn to listen and the learn to be led are, for me, the guts of the whole Christian faith, right? That I'm the one being led. I'm not the one leading. My confidence is in who is leading me, and I need to learn how to listen to Him. Now, there are things about apologetics that are obviously important and that maybe answer some questions, but I think that sometimes we think, if I get the facts, then I'll be fine. And I don't think that's true. I think that there are plenty of times in our faith experience where you have the facts and you're not fine. Because the facts, God doesn't intend the facts to get you to the finish line. He intends Him to get you to the finish line. And I think we conceptualize Him and the Bible and our faith. And so I would say, disciple your kids of what it looks like to hear from God and to follow Him.
Yeah, that's so good because I think the opposite is true. Sometimes when we're so emphasizing the facts and
Yeah.
then one day one of the facts turns up to not be a fact,
Exactly.
then that's very destructive to one's faith.
Incredibly destructive. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
As you know, I grew up in the era probably at the very peak of modernistic influence in the
you
church.
sure did. Yeah.
So I came along and I can remember so many things like if you don't believe in 6 literal days of creation,
Yeah.
then you're probably not even a believer.
Yeah, that's right.
And, things of that nature. You might have a strong opinion one way or the other,
Sure.
which is neither here nor there.
Yeah.
But I guess the older that I have gotten, the more certain I have become
Yeah.
of the basic things of our faith.
That's right.
And the less certain and less important that the other stuff has become
Yeah.
in exchange for that mysterious awe of God.
Yeah, and I think pastorally, this is a really important point. Graceway's multi-ethnic and multi-generational, and a lot of times churches divide over the multi-generational piece because you're coming from 2 different eras.
Yeah.
Right. You have the modern, and lots of eras really, but you have, let's just make it simple, the modern era and the postmodern era, and your tribe is committed to and was taught to be committed to doctrine and certainty and all of those things, and it's good.
Mm-hmm.
It's good. But then the students, my era comes along, Gen, I don't know, X or whatever, and we have all these questions and we're doubting and we're concerned how certain you are, and you guys say, well, you guys just don't believe the Bible, and we say, no, I do believe the Bible.
Yeah.
I don't understand how you believe it the way that you do, and this divide occurs. And my generation talks about the experience of God, talks about hearing from God, and your generation talks about that, but not as much as you talk about this kind of deal. And what I want Graceway to be is yes,
Yeah. Exactly.
yeah, like help me understand how you got where you got, but then also listen to me, and don't put me in a category that my heart, my doctrine, my faith, my walk isn't. Listen, and let's both grow, and let's not be threatened by the fact that you're the age you are and they're the age they are. Let's be the church. Whenever God talks about oneness in the church, it's like, one God, one Spirit, one faith. He doesn't say one view, one eschatology, one,
Yeah.
like those aren't, and so I really, and we've talked about this a million times on this podcast and otherwise, the church is better for diversity in every way. As long as, yes, and I said this yesterday, there are certain things in our faith that we are free and called and expected to be certain about.
Yeah.
But that list is not as long as we've made it.
Yeah.
And I just think that when you make that list too long, it becomes a tool for exclusion in ways that I'm not sure are pleasing to God.
Yeah, probably not, would be the answer that I would give. But it's just so interesting to see how I think the church has an opportunity today
Agreed.
to be that voice of reason.
Yeah.
And what you just said about it's not an either or,
Right.
but it's listening to people.
Yeah.
Well, explain your point of view to me, because maybe I can learn from that.
Yeah.
And on both sides.
Yeah.
And that applies not just to biblical issues, Christianity issues, it applies to political issues, vaccine issues, the list could go
That's right.
on down the line.
Yeah.
And it's a
That's
time for the church to stand up and be the church, perhaps.
Yeah, I think so. And I don't want to make this too simplistic, but I do whenever I find myself, number one, I try to find myself across the table from people that are coming from a different place as much as possible.
Yeah.
And, social media is robbing us of that. These algorithms are reinforcing your beliefs, not challenging or growing them. And so just committing yourself to, I want to sit across from people who think about it differently than I do. But then I always, and this is a little corny, I'll be honest, but I try to consciously think about how would Jesus, if, when Jesus was on this earth and they said, this dude's a friend of hookers and the tax collectors and the felons and the drug dealers, I just try to picture Jesus' temperament with them.
Yeah.
Right? And the fact that the religious folks identified Jesus as a friend meant that it appeared that he figured out a way to enjoy people that he not only didn't agree with, but came to die for. He thought that their brokenness was significant enough that he would lay his life down. But his treatment of them was enjoyable to them. And I really think that the church has to get to a place where we can figure out a way to enjoy people wherever they are, figure out a way to listen to people wherever they are. You don't have to agree. It's not a threat. It's okay.
Yeah.
Right?
I made a comment on my Twitter feed the other day that based on what the reference that you just made to Jesus, hanging out with the prostitutes and the tax collectors and people of ill repute and bad reputation.
Yeah.
And, sometimes in church world we say, well, you should be ashamed for that. My view is you should be ashamed if you're not hanging out with people like that. That's kind of our mission.
It's true. Yeah. The church should never have become as homogenous as it is.
Yeah.
Not just around gender and race, but even in our city, the churches that are Republican churches, the churches that are Democrat churches, that I don't want any of those easy labels here.
Yeah.
Any of them. I want our label to be, they love Jesus, they're walking with him in concrete and conceptual ways, and they love people. I would die a happy man if that were our reputation.
That would be a great reputation to have.
It would be.
But we've got time for maybe one more question. And I want to go back to what you said about your kids. You're trying to instruct them in how to listen to God. And you made that point Sunday morning when you talked about learning to be still and just listen to God's voice. What does that look like? I'm your kid. Teach me.
Well, with my kids, it's, they'll bring me a problem or a desire or something, and I'll say, why don't you talk to God about that, and then let me know what he says. And so I'm trying to teach them in the certainty of my instruction. You talk to God, he'll hear you. Tell me what he says. I'm trying to infer that in there. And I'm trying to not solve things. My son Noah is 14, my daughter Emma is 13, Isaiah is 8, going on 40, about to be 9. And they're all so different. But, with Isaiah, it's still more instruction. Yeah. I'm not as much. I always say to him, who loves you more than me? And he said, for a while, he was like, nobody. And I have taught him to say, God does. God loves you more than me, but no one else. So we're still at that kind of catechism place where I'm just trying to teach them things. With Noah and Emma, they're in school and girls and boys and grades and school, and I'm trying to instruct less and mentor more. Yeah. And just say, hey, you're a person of faith. You talk to God about that and tell me what he says, and then we'll talk about it. So I'm trying to give them that experience and to call them to that discipline of talk to God. I think how do you get still? I said this yesterday. You're not going to get still if you don't think God intends to talk. Yeah. And I really think fundamentally that is a lot of our problem, is that we think, well, God talks to Pastor Jeff, but he didn't talk to me, not like he talks to Pastor Jeff. And my response would be, God talks to anybody who's willing to listen. But the way that we show that we're willing to listen is, what does the Bible say? The consistency, seek, knock, there's a repetition to it. We turn the volume down on other voices and other distractions. And so, I'm on social media and blah, 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 but the rate of consumption, we don't think of it as volume. But the amount of voices you have in your life, the amount of news you watch, the amount of scrolling you do, God's not going to compete. Yeah. And so I would say figure out a way to lessen the voices, figure out a way to be more consistent, figure out a way to collect and anticipate. So, I have stuff on my phone, I have journals. I said yesterday, God, honestly, probably 3 or 4 nights a week, I feel like God wakes me up. And I'm convicted by that because I feel like it's because I must not be listening during the day.
Yeah, I remember you saying that yesterday. I love the way that you are approaching your kids because you're sending them back to God rather than sending them with a formalistic approach.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think that listening to the voice of God, at least my thought on that is it's probably a little different for every person.
Agreed.
Just like you celebrate diversity in the church, that goes to the individual level.
Yeah.
God made us all to be different.
Yeah, yeah. And I say that, right now we're going through the Bible in a year, and I'm asking people to read through the Bible in a year. And I say very particularly, I'm wanting you to learn what God's voice sounds, how God's voice sounds to you. Mm-hmm. And again, that's a very postmodern statement, right?
Of course. Yeah.
In the modern world, God's voice sounds the same to everyone. God's the same yesterday, today, and forever. No, I don't talk to Emma the same way I talk to Noah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Exactly.
And so believing the certainty is that God speaks.
Yeah.
The awe is God speaks differently to all of us.
Yeah.
He doesn't say different truths. You might say them different ways, and that's a really exciting.
Yeah,
and
I love that.
beautiful
That's
thing.
something I've had to learn. My generation would say, let me give you 5 points on how to be still before God, and they're all alliterated, right?
That's right.
And again, it's not that is necessarily
No.
bad, but it's getting that balance
Yeah.
to where, there's so many things that we can be certain about, not as many as we would like to think,
Yeah.
but you can never erase that awe of God.
Well, and I also want to say this because I think this is really important. If you think that you have something that you're certain about, don't cling to it.
Yeah.
Because I think that sometimes we think that God is like, be certain about this, and God's trying to get it out of our hands.
Yeah.
This isn't going to serve you well in the future, son. And so he'll bring valleys or tragedy or uncertainty because he's trying to take things that we shouldn't be certain about out of our hands, but we cling to them.
Yeah.
And that's why I think, for me anyways, the learn to listen, learn to be led is a really important thing. That, God, I want to be certain about what you want me to be certain about.
Right.
And on those things, I'm going to cling to them with all my might
Yeah.
until you try to take him out of my hands. Well, when's he going to do that? Well, I don't know. He's the shepherd.
Yeah. Cling to God,
Cling
not to
God.
things.
That's right.
Not to ideas.
Yeah, that's right.
Exactly.
That's
Wow,
good.
Pastor Tim, that's great, man. Thank you for that. And let me just thank our listeners for being with us today on Let's Talk. Let me just ask you to do a couple of things as we get ready to sign off today. Number one, please subscribe if you haven't done so already to our podcast. You can find us wherever you get your podcast. And second, if you could like us, if you could leave a review, that just helps us to be able to get the word out to more people. If this has been a help to you, we hope it will be a help to others as well. Pastor Tim, thank you as always, and we'll see you next week.
Sounds good.
Thanks for tuning into the Graceway Experience. Hope we can talk again sometime.